The last thing I thought before I fell asleep last night was, "We are at war." The first thing I thought when I woke up this morning was, "We are at war." I didn't distance myself from it because there are some acts nations take for which we will all bear the burden of collective responsibility, no matter how vehemently individual citizens might disagree with them. As a country, we are at war. And the man who led us into this war is a corrupt, degraded, ignorant know nothing who acted illegally to plunge us into a potentially catastrophic situation without the consent of Congress because, despite the fact that he is president of the United States and arguably the most recognized figure on the planet, Donald Trump wasn't getting enough attention. He is, as he has always been and always will be, the wrong man at the wrong time. It is long past time that we stop imputing some deeper or reasonable motives to Donald Trump. Despite being depraved and cruel, much like his cohort, Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald is driven by the most primitive impulses that center almost solely around protecting his fragile ego from humiliation, about which he has a pathological terror, and himself from the reality that he is a complete fraud. Donald is still no doubt stinging from the acronym recently coined to mock his inability to follow through on anything. TACO. Trump always chickens out. In the wake of Israeli strikes against Iran, Donald spent a few days saber rattling only to back off, chicken out, if you will, in the wake of searing criticism by some of the most reliably sycophantic members of his cult. For example, Representative Marjorie Greene, a Republican from Georgia, Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist and vile human, and Steve Bannon, just an all around despicable guy. Donald announced at a bizarre press conference that his decision to address the ostensibly urgent crisis regarding Iran would be put off for 2 weeks. Only 2 days later, he ordered the attack on Iran. His allies would have us believe that Donald, a brilliant strategist, was faking us out as well as Iran. Sure. An infinitely more plausible explanation is that, on the one hand, Donald hates being challenged or contradicted, especially from those who almost always fall in line. Therefore, he felt the need to double down on his threats by carrying them out. On the other hand, Donald is a desperate black hole of need. The lights of compliments disappear as soon as he soaks them in. So, by changing the narrative, he could make sure the spotlight turned back on him. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, Donald wrote this on his failing social media site. Quote, "We have completed our successful attack on the three nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention in this matter." Thank you for your attention in this matter. Just want to take a second because I think it's worth reminding ourselves that the United States is currently enthralled to an insane person. Also, you do not engage in unilateral, unprovoked bombings of another country, declare victory, and then just walk away and expect peace. JD Vance can claim as much as he wants that the United States of America is, quote, "at war with Iran's nuclear program," unquote. But I'm fairly certain Iranians and most people in the rest of the world won't see it that way. In another post, Donald wrote, mostly in all caps, quote, "This is an historic moment for the United States of America, Israel, and the world. Iran must agree to end this war," unquote. As far as I'm aware, that is not how it works. Israel and America are the aggressors here. In his remarks, Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister of Iran, said that Donald has betrayed Iran and betrayed diplomacy while the two countries were actively in the midst of negotiations, and he is also deceiving his own voters after promising to stay out of foreign wars. Araghchi also said that Iran would respond in the name of quote unquote self defense. This does not bode well for the thousands of American troops in the Middle East who are in close proximity to Iran, many of whom are within minutes of a potential missile strike. By defying very clear international law in order to bomb Iran, Donald has put this country on the wrong side of this issue. I am not at all an expert in these matters, but I doubt that Iran will choose to engage in an all out war with the United States. At the moment, it is a considerably weakened nation, and its allies, the other so called axis of resistance states, which include Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, and Yemen, are much weaker now than they were 18 months ago. But there are other potential dangers to our having engaged in this conflict in the first place. Again, without our having faced an immediate threat from the country we attacked. For example, our vulnerability to terrorist attacks has increased manyfold. In a press conference announcing the strikes, after they had already occurred, Donald claimed that Iran's main nuclear enrichment facilities were, quote, completely and totally obliterated, unquote, by the American strikes. But that is far from clear. And why should we believe him anyway? During a joint press conference this morning, neither Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was pretty much willing to say whatever Donald tells him to say, nor General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, could make that determination. In other words, Iran may continue to have the ability to produce nuclear weapons. When you consider that Fordow, one of the three nuclear sites targeted, was built inside a mountain, and that according to the New York Times, experts have determined, quote, the enrichment facilities were impervious to all but a repeated assault from American buster bombs, unquote, it is highly unlikely Iran's program has been obliterated. As to the degree to which Iran's ability to build nuclear weapons was imminent, Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Connecticut, wrote on social media, quote, Iran was not close to building a deliverable nuclear weapon. The negotiations Israel scuttled with their strikes held the potential for success, unquote. Murphy says he was briefed last week by our own intelligence agencies, and according to them, as Murphy tells us, quote, Iran posed no imminent threat of attack to the United States, unquote. But Donald disagreed, and as we know, he knows better than everybody. He claimed that our intelligence is wrong. And after Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, testified to Congress that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, Donald's response was, quote, I don't care what she said, unquote. As for Iran's nuclear capabilities, it's worth remembering that during Barack Obama's second term, the United States, along with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Russia, and China, came up with and implemented a solution known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, or Iran nuclear deal. This, quote, blocked every possible pathway Iran could use to build a nuclear bomb while ensuring, through a comprehensive, intrusive, and unprecedented verification and transparency regime, that Iran's nuclear program remains exclusively peaceful moving forward, unquote. By signing on to this agreement, Iran, quote, significantly reduced its nuclear program and accepted strict monitoring and verification safeguards to ensure its program is solely for peaceful purposes, unquote. Despite his professed concerns about Iran's nuclear capabilities, Donald unilaterally pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. Despite his professed concerns about Iran's nuclear capabilities, Netanyahu objected to the deal from the start, in large part because it removed one of his clearest excuses to attack Iran. Keep in mind, Netanyahu has been saying for years that Iran's having nuclear capability was imminent. At last night's press conference, Donald made yet more threats. Quote, there will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran, far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. If peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill, unquote. This isn't over, not by a long shot. The President of the United States authorized an unprovoked military strike without congressional authorization in an egregious violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. There are four potential outcomes here that are not mutually exclusive: the political rehabilitation of war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, attacks on American soldiers in close proximity to Iran, terrorist attacks on American soil, and increased executive power as the Republican Congress cedes yet more of its constitutional authority to Donald fucking Trump.